Okay, so let's do a little experiment and practice these words and pronunciations in our speech to text recognition tool. So here I am using Microsoft Word. You may be using a different one, but let's see how it works with these pronunciations. Remembered, remembered, played, played, allowed, allowed, called, called, turned, turned, moved, moved, changed, changed. So as you can see in the first category here, I was deliberately adding the extra syllable like many Spanish speakers do. And Microsoft Word dictation was giving me the extra syllable. It was reading the extra syllable as an extra word. Now, I did add an extra syllable here in this word allowed, but it did still detected the correct word, probably because it couldn't find another word that, or another combination of words that sounded similar. Down here, I had one of the more difficult ones, which is where you're combining the V and T sound. That's quite a difficult pronunciation. It's not moved, it's moved, and you have to pronounce that V with the T sound. Moved. Here we have another quite difficult one, and that's because it has the J sound, which we already discussed in a previous lesson. You have to combine that J with the D sound, and that's quite tricky. Changed, changed. So you should go and try those in your speech to text recognition tool and notice that if it gives you these extra words, it's because you're pronouncing an extra syllable and you can't. As you can see, all of these are correct when pronounced correctly. So the Microsoft speech to text recognition, I've done it in Google Translate as well. It's quite accurate for detecting the correct pronunciation of these words. In a moment, we'll have a look at the other words with the T ending. But in the meantime, go and spend some time and practice those words. Okay, so now let's take a look at the words ending in T, T. So in the first column, I'm going to mispronounce them and let's see what the Microsoft dictate gives us. Finished, finished, watched, watched, walked, walked, stressed, stressed, liked, liked, looked, looked, helped, helped. As you can see, we're getting the same problem. Because I deliberately added the extra syllable, the program is not detecting, it's adding an extra word after the infinitive or some other version of the infinitive. Stressed is a good one. It's stressed. Likehead is detecting head. I've seen sometimes it's detected it sometimes. And I've sometimes, when doing this, this has given me Lucard as well for some reason. And here I've sometimes seen, instead of it might give me word. But what it's not giving me are the correct words until I pronounce them correctly. And it's quite difficult because it's difficult to imagine that these are a T, that this sound here is actually a T sound. Finished, watched, walked, stressed, liked, looked, helped. Now, just a note as well on liked, K sound here is very, very soft, extremely soft. If you try to pronounce the K too strongly, you're going to get a like it, but the K is quite soft. This pronunciation is very, very similar to light. And if you get light, it's possible that you're actually pronouncing the liked correctly. So maybe don't get too stressed if you're getting light instead of liked. Quite difficult, that one.
So how do we know when to use the de and te endings? Well, let me first remind you about vocalized and unvocalized sounds. We can also refer to them as sounds where you need to activate your vocal cords, as we discussed earlier in the lesson series, and sounds where the vocal cords are not activated. If you put your finger to your throat, you will be able to feel a vibration when making a vocalized sound. V, Z, J, R, O, N are all good examples of vocalized sounds. So go ahead, make those sounds now and put your finger to your throat like I did. You should feel the vibration. I'm going to demo those again. V, Z, J, R, O, N. Pause the video and take a minute to experiment with this. Examples of unvocalized sounds are those ending with p, s, sh, ch, and k. Put your finger to your throat again and you will notice that there is no vibration when making these sounds. So the rule is that when we have to vocalize the ending of a regular verb in its infinitive form, we make a d sound to put it into the past and participle form. For example, shave, buzz, allege, bother, flow, and burn all have vocalized endings. Go ahead and check for yourself. Shave, buzz, allege, bother, flow, burn. Therefore, we must add the d ending, and this gives us shaved, buzzed, bothered, flowed, and burned. Unvocalized endings take the t sound. Examples of verbs with unvocalized endings are pop, miss, push, fetch, poke, and laugh. Putting those into the past simple or participle form, we get popped, missed, pushed, fetched, poked, and laughed. There are many more d ending verbs than there are ones ending with t. If you can remember the 6 examples of unvocalized endings I have given you, then you won't need to know any more, because this covers the vast majority of the t endings. Being able to know and distinguish between the d and t is not the most important thing you need to know from this lesson. It is really for advanced learners of English. However, it is important in some cases. Look at the verb build, which is irregular, so we never add ed, but it has a clear d sound in the infinitive and present simple. In the past simple and participle form, it has a clear t sound. Built, build, and built. Can you hear the difference? Also remember that we need to ensure we pronounce the t sound in the negative of can, can't. If you don't, then you will be misunderstood to have said the complete opposite of what you meant. I can't go tomorrow, and I can go tomorrow. Even us native speakers sometimes have to ask a person to repeat if they have not pronounced the t ending sufficiently. This is quite a long lesson, and I have deliberately spent a lot of time on this sound because you simply cannot avoid it in English. As I said previously, we use it everywhere. The rules are relatively easy and there are no exceptions, which is a rare thing in English. The main difficulty you will have is making the correct sounds. If you can remember only one thing from this lesson, that should be only add an extra syllable to verbs where the last consonant is a T or D. But you really should practice those difficult consonant sound combinations. That takes effort. In summary, you have to remember these 3 things. Only use the extra syllable ed sound when verb has a T or a D as the last consonant. Add a D sound to verbs that have a vocalized ending. Add a T sound to verbs that have a non-vocalized ending. And finally, practice the sound. You should take a few minutes now to practice pronouncing those verbs I gave you in the past simple participle form. When you have that done, move on to the next lesson where I will give you some exercises.